The BMW 5 Series has had some great generations over the years. I look to the E39 as being the best in the modern age. But some people might like the E60, which is beginning to age like fine wine, especially with the V10. But also, I think now in 2023, the G30 is becoming a great generation as well. But today in 2024, with the new G60, I think people are going to be freaking out, especially when it comes to the exterior design. And I think that if YouTube existed back in 2004, we'd be saying the exact same thing about the E60. But you can't judge a book by its cover. In fact, the G60 has a lot of new technological improvements, but also mechanical improvements as well. This generation isn't just going to be a full gas-powered model. We also have the i5, and because of that, BMW had to be very crafty with what they were going to do with this generation. And in this video, we're going to go over everything about the 2024 BMW 530i and get a taste for what this generation is going to be offering. We're going to take a look at the exterior, the interior, take it out for a test drive, and also see why you shouldn't be hesitant walking into a G60, and in fact, you might really like it. Now, before we get in this review, I'd like to thank BMW of Sudbury in Sudbury, Massachusetts, for allowing me to film this video. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive BMW inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. The G60 5 Series represents a pivotal moment not only for BMW, but the sedan in general, as the brand from Bavaria begins to balance both internal combustion powered vehicles and full EV products. For the first time in the 5 Series history, there's an electric variant. But for those who are reluctant or not ready to make the switch, you have the 530i. In a market that's evolving for the first time in over a decade, cars like the 5 Series are fundamentally changing, as they're taking steps to sustainability and electrification. But in the meantime, BMW ushers in a new generation that's drawn both the ire and admiration from enthusiasts and journalists alike. Starting off with pricing, the 530i with xDrive comes in at $60,200, which is about $2,300 more compared to a base 5 Series with rear-wheel drive. Without stating the obvious, a lot is new with the G60 generation, not only design-wise, but also mechanically, which ultimately makes this 5 Series better from a refinement standpoint. If you've noticed that the 530i looks bigger, your eyes wouldn't be deceiving you. In fact, it now has a length of 199 inches, which is 3 inches longer than the G30, but also an inch wider. To put that into perspective, the 5 Series today is about the same size as a BMW 8 Series Gran Coupe, which is rather astonishing. Because the G60 now introduces a full EV variant into the lineup, BMW reworked many suspension and chassis components, including extending the wheelbase, but also retuning a double wishbone front axle and multi-link rear axle that will ultimately improve rigidity and refinement, but also weight distribution. With the gas-powered model sharing the same platform and architecture as the i5, it was only natural for the 530i to take elements from the EV model and vice versa. But as a result, compared to the G30, the 2024 model does make a rather bold entrance. Aesthetically, the 5 Series front fascia does resemble the refreshed X5, but the squared off shape is certainly inspired by the 7 Series, and the body lines on the hood have a resemblance to some of the sports cars in the lineup. As you've seen across the BMW family, the kidney grills do get enhanced, having a larger presence for the front end. And also new are redesigned LED headlights, which now wrap around the front fender. Helping to improve the aerodynamics, there will be active side air curtains, and a minor cosmetic feature that will get overlooked is the aggressive bumper, which does add a bit of dynamic undertones. Moving over to the side profile, our model today is sitting on the optional 20-inch Aero bicolor silver alloy wheels, replacing the 19s that come standard. A focal point for this generation was on-road comfort, and the way in which this platform can handle not only the larger tires, but the harsh road conditions is unquestionably an improvement from the G30, as the 5 Series has an almost flagship-like demeanor on the street, and that's something we'll discuss in further detail during the test drive. You'll have body color folding side mirrors with turn signal indicators, to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then coming around to the back, the rear fascia might be as controversial as the front end, as the thinner taillights, which are similar to what's currently on the X5 and X7, are a departure in styling for a 5 Series that we haven't seen since the E60. A subtle touch that adds a classy color contrast is the brushed aluminum accents that creep their way up the rear bumper, but also on the C-pillar where the number 5 is stamped into the trim. Despite the 5 Series having a boxier shape for this generation, there is something classy about this sedan the longer you stare at it. Under the hood, powering the 530i is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, producing 255 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with a ZF 8-speed automatic transmission. First seen for the G30 540i, a mild hybrid system is now paired with this powertrain, providing further refinement to the performance, as the 530i is primarily a luxury sedan rather than emulating an M5 in any way. While not a barnstormer, the 5 Series is surprisingly quick, regardless of what you see on paper. The smoothness of the accelerations and the almost EV-like spryness is something that's always lacked with the 530i, further incentivizing you to upgrade to an inline 6. But for the G60, even in base form, the sedan raises eyebrows. Since our model today does have xDrive, we have all-wheel drive for better year-round versatility. But keeping up with tradition, rear-wheel drive does come standard. For fuel economy, BMW rates the 530i at 27 miles per gallon in the city and 35 miles per gallon on the highway, which is more than respectable, but also a bit surprising for a car in this class. Regardless of how you feel about the exterior, it's the driving environment where you may sing a different tune. For starters, the dashboard now wears a futuristic design with a full digital gauge cluster and infotainment system sharing a conjoined screen. Further taking steps to a buttonless future for the interiors of BMWs, there's touch-sensitive icons on the door panel for your memory seat, but also on the dashboard that controls your exterior lighting, which certainly takes some time adjusting to. The same goes for the center console, where BMW retained the rotary dial and quick access buttons, which are now haptic feedback, that still efficiently get you to different menus. New is the My Modes icon that replaces the drive mode selector that used to be found on the left side of the center console, and as you did in the past, you can switch between drive modes on the touchscreen. Getting into this user interface, this is BMW's iDrive 8.5 infotainment system that functions pretty much the same as what we see in other current BMW products. The biggest learning curve for traditional BMW shoppers will be how you adjust the dual-zone climate control and 3-level heated seats and steering wheel, as these functions are now found on the head unit, much like we're experiencing from competitors. You'll have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with onboard navigation, and this model is equipped with the $950 Bowers & Wilkins surround sound system, which amplifies the audio of your favorite music compared to the standard speaker setup. With the ability to either use this infotainment system as a touchscreen or scroll through menus with the rotary dial, the dual functionality makes using the iDrive 8.5 system effortless, even with some of the curveballs it throws at you compared to the older iDrive 7. Of course, you will have an onboard assistant to ease your experience if you don't want to be distracted by using screens. On our model, we have a number of different camera angles to help park the 530i, which includes a top view and front and rear cameras with trajectory. Compared to last generation, the 5 Series receives a revamped digital instrument cluster, one that's now common throughout the BMW lineup. Unlike in the past, you can now customize this display with different layouts, but also the information that's being shown to you, and that can be controlled by using the dial mounted on the right side of your heated leather-wrapped steering wheel. Also new and improved is your head-up display, which comes with its own set of layouts, and because of the higher resolution, but also how clearly it's projected on the windshield, it's possible you may never look down at the gauge cluster when on a spirited drive. Aside from the tech, it's the comfort that has us raving for this generation, as the Vaganza leatherette upholstery is a substantial improvement compared to the Sensatec seats it's replacing. While you can opt for merino leather, it may not be necessary, as the quality is astounding, and since the bolstering is firm and aggressive, commuting in this car will be a pleasant experience. More importantly, the 5 Series for 2024 now feels the part, at least from a luxury point of view, and that was clearly a point of emphasis for this generation. To round out the interior, we do have a wireless phone charging pad, and there'll be 2 USB-C inputs up front. For the center storage compartment, there should be enough room for a smartphone and wallet. And above will be a power moonroof, which will let in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now, quickly taking a look at the second row for the 2024 BMW 5 Series, passengers are going to find themselves to be very comfortable in this car, not only up front, but also in the back. Even though these seats don't provide the same bolstering that we see for the front seats, they provide a lot of support and cushioning. And one thing I've noticed about this generation is that they've really prioritized that interior comfort more so than what we saw from last generation. And the G30 is a highly respected car, but the G60 takes things one step further. I really love the fact that these seats do give you that molding feel, that it kind of shapes around you, giving you that opulent comfort. Now, BMW rates the second row seating area with around 36.5 inches of legroom, and that would be better than the current Mercedes-Benz E-Class. There's plenty of legroom to work with in this car. Also, another thing too, and this is not going to really be talked about that much with this sedan, is that you do have a bit of a higher roof line, so that prioritizes having taller passengers sit back here. I think if you're on the height of 5'8" or 5'9", possibly a bit higher than that, you're not going to be hitting your head on the headliner, which I think is fantastic for a sedan, as a lot of buyers still are reluctant to go in the crossover direction. If you're somebody who doesn't want to buy an X5, the 5 Series still gives you that family friendliness aspect that you're looking for in a sedan, but also you get that practicality that a lot of cars just don't give you anymore in this market. Also, what I like too is that when it comes to the interior space, you have a lot of it, plenty of shoulder room, but we're all going to find out if you can squeeze in a third person. Now, for that center seat, you're going to have a very aggressive center hump, which isn't too much of a surprise for a car in this market. Shoulder room, though, I think you could squeeze in that third person. I think this car, even with the center hump being aggressive and the fact that it does take away from legroom and shoulder room, it's not too much where you find yourself being claustrophobic. So this could, in theory, be a 5-passenger vehicle overall. Also back here, you do have 2 rear air vents to go along with 2 USB-C inputs. Also an additional USB-C input on the back of the front seats. What I also like too is that the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, you see that on the door panels, and it just really gives you that upscale feel for this car that we really didn't see in the past. And then, of course, to round out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Now, making our way around to the back, you are going to receive a power trunk. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 18.5 cubic feet of room, which surprisingly isn't much of a difference compared to the G30 5 Series this sedan is replacing. Now, you would think that with the longer dimensions and longer wheelbase, that would translate to the cargo area, but it doesn't, and more importantly, it helps out the second row so passengers can be comfortable back there. But I was able to fit all my camera gear today, no problem. So that's 2 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod, and I had plenty of room to go grocery shopping afterwards. So I do think that if you are going on a road trip, you could probably squeeze in 5 or 6 bags of luggage. Also back here on both sides of the rear cargo area, you will have some cubbies for some smaller items, such as maybe a couple water bottles, car detail equipment, or maybe even a first aid kit. You're also going to notice the latches for the second row seats, which unlocks them, so that way you can easily fold them if you are storing more items back here. And then, of course, with the second row seats folded, you can store longer items, but most likely, if you are moving a lot of objects around and you're constantly on the go, you'd probably go with the X5. But more importantly though, if you do currently own a 3 Series, this is a nice upgrade, not only when it comes to the practicality and also with the sedan being family friendly, but also you're going to have the refinement that comes along with that 5 Series badge. Then beneath the floor mat, you are going to have a spare tire, so if you do encounter a flat on your road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. And then finally, for the moment we've all been waiting for, let's take the new 2024 BMW 530i out for a test drive. All right, so we've checked out the exterior. We've taken a look at the new space age interior. Now let's take the new BMW 530i out for a test drive to see how it performs, how it handles, how it drives, how it compares to last generation, but also how does it compare to other mid-size luxury sedans in this market. We've talked about the dimensions at length, but when you factor in at 199 inches in length, this car is around the same size as the E65 7 Series back around 2007. If we were to bring this car back to the past, people would look at the 5 Series as being a flagship. And that really translates to the driving experience, the cabin, I think even the exterior as well. When we had taken a look at the photos and some of the videos that came out from BMW, everyone was questioning, oh, the looks are really wild on this generation. I think a lot of it is because the G30 was really nicely styled and classy. Almost in a way, we look at this generation as being the E60 of the 2020s. So I think it's almost perfect that it's known as the G60. Now, they've done a lot of work with the suspension, both for the front and rear axles. A lot of it is to really help balance out the weight when it comes to the battery, because for the first time, we have the i5, which is an all-electric sedan from BMW. So there's going to be a lot of differences when it comes to the rigidity, when it comes to the handling, when it comes to suspension. And you really feel that immediately with this car. For 2024, you have an almost evenly distributed weight, 50-50, both front and rear. Also, they have given this car more of a longer wheelbase, really to just elevate the driving experience overall, whether you are going with a 530 or even an i5. And this car really does feel a lot more classier, but also upscale as well. And that's a big cliche on this channel where I talk about that. But for sure, for this generation, this definitely feels more advanced than what we saw from last generation. And I loved the G30, but from a driving experience, when it comes to an on-road perspective, this feels really comfortable, but also feels very composed on the roadways. Without stating the obvious, BMW claims that the 5 Series takes the sporty aspect from the 3 Series and also the luxurious comforts from the 7 Series, and that was kind of the ethos behind the 5 Series design. But I really feel as though that this time around, the 5 Series is a bit more special, and I know people are going to be rolling their eyes because, like, how could you say that with the exterior design? But I think it will grow on you. When I look at the car from the outside, I'm like, you know what? This actually does make sense, especially when you compare it to the 7 Series, which I think is a bit wild for BMW's current lineup. What I also like, too, is that even for just a 530i, the interior comfort is pretty surprising, where these seats do wrap around you. Now, sports seats are standard now, and that to me goes a long way because I feel the bolstering hugging me, and I feel really secure in this car, and it really just adds to the cockpit feel of the interior. Another aspect to the driving experience that has been improved for 2024 is interior insulation. The cockpit is so quiet, but also I don't hear the outside world at all. And again, that was really reworked with the suspension to make this car feel more upscale and grand. And even as we go over the bumps and imperfections, the suspension is handling them very nicely. None of that is translating to the cabin. I'm not getting thrown around. And this is a really nice, serene driving experience. Now, we don't have a sports tuned suspension on the 530i, but let's see what the cornering is like. Nice smooth acceleration, strong brakes into the corner. Feeling some of that body roll, but very responsive powertrain. Now, for the first time, we have a mild hybrid system paired with this 4-cylinder engine, and you really feel it, especially when it comes to those accelerations and, of course, with that transmission, that's ZF 8-speed as always. And you feel the linear power band, and it just adds to the refinement of this car. So you have 255 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque, and you have a 0 to 60 time of around 5.8 seconds, which is very respectable. In fact, compared to the current Mercedes-Benz E-Class, it is a bit quicker. And what I really like here about this car is that everything is so smooth, everything is so elegant, and that is something that you might not have experienced in the prior generations for the 5 Series. And that just really adds into what BMW is doing for this model, but also where this segment is going, because when you do look at the new E-Class from Mercedes-Benz that should be arriving at dealers sometime later this year, these cars are becoming more grand, they're becoming more upscale, and as I talked about earlier on, if you brought these cars back to the past, everyone would look at this as being either an S-Class or a 7 Series. It would be seen as a flagship. It's a nice sound coming out of that 4-cylinder, but it doesn't really enter the cabin, so it gives you this isolated feel behind the wheel, but still the driving dynamics are perfect. Of course, with it being a 530i, you're not going to have the tightest of handling. I would expect that for the 540 or even an M, of course, but for the 530 you get really competent handling, and it still feels very athletic and agile. What's also impressive too is that for a car of this size, it doesn't feel like a land yacht. And when you compare the size to that old 7 Series, you know, we would look at that car as being huge and gigantic, and yet this has a nice footprint on the roadways, where even though you do have the wider track, you have the longer wheelbase, it feels like a true 5 Series. And I think a lot of that is because when you look at the new 7 Series, it's almost about 10 inches longer. So in relative terms, this is still a decently sized sedan that doesn't feel so large where you're gonna be walking into this car from a 3 Series and thinking, oh my gosh, this is a huge leap forward compared to my 3 Series. In fact, you're gonna feel very comfortable in this car. It will be a natural upgrade. What also should be noted as well is the redesigned steering wheel, which, if you've watched my other reviews from BMW, looks very similar to what you're going to find in the iX. So you have a flat bottom steering wheel, but also somewhat flat up top, but also even the side as well. It's almost hexagonal in a way. And you have very nice grips for the 9 and 3 positions, which often get forgotten from a lot of manufacturers. Everyone really focuses on the 10 and 2, which very aggressive grips, typical for BMW, but really nice, comfortable positioning for the steering wheel. So if you are somebody that likes driving at 9 and 3, or even at 8 and 4, you're going to feel pretty comfortable behind the wheel. Also, it really just adds to the confidence you're going to have when you are in the corners. But again, most likely, with the 530i, it's all going to be about that leisure and that luxury, and the G60 definitely has that. And that, to me, is a defining characteristic for this generation, because when you first see this car, when you first walk in, I think you're going to be genuinely surprised at the cabin layout, but also the comfort, more importantly. And that is something that I think does get lost in translation, especially in the 2020s, where everything is about technology. And of course, BMW has to move in that direction. But it's great to see that they didn't forget about the seating comfort. They didn't forget about the fact that someone's actually still driving this car. I'm going to do one little acceleration here. Not too bad. The linear power band, the fact that this engine is pretty responsive, you have the mild hybrid system, it all just comes together and really harmonizes the driving experience. And for an entry model for the new 5 Series, this is great to see. This, I actually cannot wait until we see the higher trims for this model arrive. But also, this really gets me excited for the fact that this generation will come with a station wagon. So, like, at the moment, with the 530i, I'm just getting excited here, because this, to me, just shows that even for just a gas-powered model, that with the fact that you do get a full EV variant, that BMW didn't forget about the fact that some people will go ICE. And because they had to retune the suspension, because they had to retune the axles, and just the fact that we now have the technology, the interior quality, and even just the performance overall with this powertrain, even though it's just a 4-cylinder, this just feels perfect right out of the gate. It feels really perfect right out of the box. And if you're hopping in from a prior generation and you're somebody who is open to the G60 from the G30, you're definitely going to love what this car is giving you from a on-road perspective, but also even it's a daily driving perspective. It's going to be a pleasant experience for you. You're going to enjoy it, but also it's not just going to be about the luxury. It's also going to be about the driving experience as well. It's going to be a car that is going to perform quite well. It's going to be very smooth on the roadways, and there is a sense of elegance to this 5 Series that maybe we wouldn't have associated with this model in the past. So to quickly wrap up my time with the 2024 BMW 530i, what are my final thoughts and takeaways for BMW's midsize luxury sedan? I do think that when it comes to the exterior, it's a bit jarring at first, even in person. It will take some time to get used to, especially if you park this car next to a G30. It's almost poetic justice that this is branded as a G60, because 20 years ago, the E60 replaced the E39, which everyone today would say is the very essence of what a 5 Series should be. And I think a lot of us will say the exact same thing about the G30, especially if you're a BMW enthusiast. However, what won't require a transition period at all is the interior comfort, but also the driving experience and just the overall refinement. What BMW had to do with this platform to accommodate an i5 and a battery with the full EV model has really benefited the gas-powered version for sure by a country mile compared to the G30. Because the comfort is immediate. When you step inside, you notice that the way the dashboard is designed, the way the seats feel, the way the cabin wraps around you is something you might not have had with a G30. But also, when it comes to the performance, when it comes to the on-road driving experience, the retuned suspension, the front and rear axles, also the longer wheelbase, makes this car truly feel like a flagship if this was designed 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The fact that it's the same length as a 7 Series back in 2006 kind of tells you where this market is going, where this segment is going in general, because we're going to see the exact same thing with the new E-Class, and BMW is one of the first ones to get to this segment and give you that futuristic design and also give you that technology that you want to see in 2023 heading into 2024. And I think if you are somebody who's looking at specifically buying a 530i, you're going to love this car. You're going to love the fact that it's so smooth, not only when it comes to the suspension, but also the powertrain as well. And a lot of it is because of the mild hybrid system. This car is almost too smooth, in fact, to a point where I think buyers who are strictly in the $60,000 to $70,000 price range are definitely not going to feel left out by going with the 5 Series over the 7 Series. Now, of course, in 2023, what differentiates a flagship from other models not only is the size, but also the technology. You're not going to get the whole 9 yards. You're not going to get all those creature comforts that you see in the 7 Series. But if you're hopping in from an older 5 Series or even a couple generations ago, this is going to feel like a massive leap forward. And I think that is what's going to ultimately be why this car is going to be seen as being too futuristic compared to the G30. But within its segment, this is exactly what we're going to be seeing across the board. And at least for the 530i, the fact that this is so smooth, I can't wait to see what a 540i or an M5 is going to be like. Because what BMW had to do to the engineering of this car really gives me a lot of hopes for the future and what BMW has planned for not only the M5 but also the Touring as well, which that should be arriving probably in a couple of years. So I'm actually excited having experienced this car, but as a BMW purist, as an enthusiast of the BMW brand, the design will take some time to get used to. But when it comes to the driving environment, I think this is better than the G30, and you might feel the same way as well. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.